me a sec. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So, hello everyone. A warm welcome from Reticulum. My name is Simran Asawa, and I'm a PhD student at ETH Zurich, and I'm one of the co-founders of Reticulum. We are a networking community that aims to connect STEM undergrad, postgrad students with STEM professionals to share experiences and grow together. Today, we are here for our last event from the Tri-Event series, How to Masters Abroad. And with that, I would just like to hand over to our moderator for today's session, Ashwin Naren, and he'll give us more details about how we are going to do this.
Thanks a lot, Simran. So as Simran said, I'm Ashwin, and I'm currently pursuing my PhD in Germany. And I'm also a co-founder of the Reticulum. And today's event is more about understanding the application document. So I would just start a short presentation, and we will go through what exactly is the format for today. And then we have with us our three guests. And so this is what the application docs are about. We are focusing on the admission in the United States, European Union master programs. And for us, today's agenda would be something like this. We are going to go through something like that. Like we are going to give each section a allotted amount of time, and then we're going to discuss it. Later on towards the end, we'll open the discussion with the audience. For all the audience, it's just suggested that we recommend you to be muted. And whenever you have any question, you can always put up in the chat. And once we open the audience question, we will have you can unmute yourself and we will discuss it. Okay, with that, I would like to first of all introduce or give the stage to the guest of ours. So we have three guests today. First is Sanjay. Sanjay, could you please say a couple of words about yourself?
Yeah, as you mentioned, my name is Sanjay, and I did my undergraduate at NIT Trichy in instrumentation and control engineering. Currently, I'm doing my master's in electrical engineering at ETH Zurich in Switzerland, specializing in systems and control. And so my main field of research is in control theory and nonlinear dynamical systems, with some applications towards healthcare. And at the same time, I'm also interested in signal processing, again, as I said, the applications towards healthcare. So I've just started my master's, and after finishing my master's, I intend to continue on with my PhD at ETH itself. Yeah. And pursue a career in academia.
Great to have you, Sanjay, on board, and great to hear that you are trying to get this electronics and healthcare together. That's really cool to listen about. Cool. Next on board, we have Anisha Krishnakumar. Anisha, could you please say a couple of words about yourself?
Thanks, Ashwin. So my name is Anisha. I graduated from NIT Warangal in 2018. I have a bachelor's degree in engineering. And out of school, I went to work for ExxonMobil in Bangalore in India. So I worked for 3 years there as a process engineer, and then in the field of engineering management. And after 3 years, I moved to the US now. So I'm at the university. I'm pursuing a master's here in engineering management. So it's really cool to speak on this panel because I took a lot of help before during my application. So really happy to give back to the community now.
Okay, thanks a lot, Anisha, for joining, and it's great to have you on board. So one thing maybe I could already tell you that if it's I think we were having some technical issues, so it's okay if you just also switch off the video, because then I think the audio will be much better, right? If we face that again. Okay, cool. Moving on to the third and the final guest, it's Nitin. And Nitin, could you please say a couple of words about yourself?
Yeah, hello. So my name is Nitin. So I did my undergraduate from NIT Warangal. I am from 2019 batch in biotechnology. And after that, I went to IIT Kharagpur for my master's MTech in agriculture biotechnology. But after 1 year, I moved to Germany in Max Planck School Method to Life for my master's plus direct track PhD program. And in first year, I was in Heidelberg doing my coursework, but right now I am in Mainz doing my lab rotation at Max Planck Institute for Polymer Research. So basically in this program, the main focus is on making synthetic cells for different purposes, from medical field to chemistry, physics, everything you can think of. So, yeah.
Okay, great to have you on board, Nitin. Okay, so let's get started for today with today's event without further ado. Thanks for all the guests for introducing themselves. So I would be moderating the session, and I mean, most of you who have joined are probably well aware of the application process. If not, then you should get started right away. And most of the websites that you visit for all the universities, they have something like graduate admission website or a graduate admission webpage where you can find your different courses and start applying. Today, we're going to focus mostly on the application documents which are required for most of these things, most of these applications, most of these programs. And a couple of important ones are, for example, your transcripts, your CGPA, your GRE, TOEFL score, and the GMAT score in case of MEM and MIM programs, and also for MBA. Your CV and resume, and your SOP, which makes a big difference, the LOR. And further on, we will also go through a couple of Reticulum website resources, which we have tried to curate, and you could also make use of that. So let's get started with the first section. The section, just to remind you again, I would just give a small brief overview of the things that we're going to discuss, like what GRE is, what CV is. But today our guests are here to share their experience as to how they, wrote their CV, how did they started their SOP, that writer's block that you have, what happens when you approach a professor for an LOR, how to approach them professionally, and how to get the best LOR which you can. So these are the things that we're going to focus on today, and our guests will share their experience from different backgrounds, from different fields of interest, and in different countries also. Okay. So about the transcripts and CGPA, I mean, most of us are very well aware what the transcripts and CGPA are. Two or three important points which everyone should be made aware of is that it's always good to maintain a high CGPA, especially which becomes relevant for scholarships. And another thing which comes handy is that you're gonna, when you have your transcripts ready, you will have to probably print it, and you will have to get it accredited by some of the other officer in your university or some legal person outside the university, calculate the ECTS other credits which are in European system. And another thing which comes relevant is the credits and the relevance to the target course. So this is just a basic overview of the transcripts and CGPA, but let's hear more from the guests as to how important do they think that one's CGPA is. And maybe I could forward that question to Sanjay. So in your program, based on what your students and what your friends or your peers have, how important is the CGPA?
Well, to be frank, from what I've noticed, the United States generally takes in all applications with a holistic view. That is, they not only look at CGPA, they look at the nature of courses that are being done. Like, have you taken some honors courses? Have you taken some advanced graduate level courses in your undergraduate itself? And your essays, your letters of recommendation, everything matters as far as the United States is concerned. But from what I've seen with respect to European admissions is that as long as you satisfy a certain threshold for the GPA criterion, for example, ETH is heavily CGPA based. As long as you have, let's say, I don't know about other branches, but for electrical engineering, as long as you have a 9.5, you have a sure shot at getting through. And yeah, again, it all depends. For instance, let's say you did your undergraduate in electrical engineering, then obviously you would have a higher chance in getting through. That's for European universities. There's this particular criterion that they have, like the student must have completed so and so courses in their undergraduate. So let's say if you're from mechanical engineering, you'd find it very hard to go to an electrical engineering master's, even if you have a great CGPA. But again, the course matching is also important as far as the European universities are concerned. But when you talk about US universities, they are quite lenient on the cross-discipline aspect of courses. Yeah.
Great insight, Sanjay. That it clearly looks like the Europeans are less flexible as compared to US in that aspect. Okay, Anisha, would you like to add something regarding the MEM programs, because that might have different overview, right?
Sure. Yeah. Can you hear me now, like clearly, or is it chopping?
It's a little. I think chopping right now.
Just give me like one quick.
I think it's difficult to hear you still.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Now it's better.
Okay, cool. So I fully second Sanjay's point about the US universities taking a more holistic approach to applications. So I'll be fully honest here. When you said you need a really high GPA, I was like, I'm not so sure about that, because I'm myself wouldn't consider my GPA to be the best. I was in the 7.5 plus category and a 7.0 in college. Yeah, that did take a pretty big hit on the academics part. But as long as you've got a really good letter of recommendation from your prof or from your industry mentor, and you put in a lot of thought into your SOP, so your essay is actually the heart of your application. And as long as you've got a good story and narrative going on there, especially for MEM programs, if you have some professional experience also, then you can make up for your GPA being slightly less over there. So definitely having a really good GPA does only good to your application. But if your GPA isn't that high, you really have nothing to worry about. There's a lot of other avenues you can make up for through.
Thanks, Anisha. That's actually a good insight, especially for the MEM programs, because yes, as you said, the work experience would be critical. Okay, Nitin, would you like to add something for this integrated PhD sorts of things?
Yeah, so in my case, I'm not sure whether you two had some kind of interview round with your applications or not, but in my case, I had an interview round. So I had a completely different overview of how my application went. So I have a decent CGPA, and as Sanjay said, like in Europe, there is like some kind of cutoff, and after that, they like read your SOP, how well you written, and based on that you get an interview call. So in my case there was two different interview rounds. First one was like a personal interview, just to know you, whether what kind of research aptitude you have, whether you will fit in for this course or not. And after that interview I had another interview, which was in principle was an in-person interview. Like they give you a call to come to Germany and look the labs and then have an interview with two different professors. And that is kind of a technical interview where you discuss some of the papers which they gave you. And based on that, you get a admission. And what I see with my colleagues is that the interview round played a big role. So how well you expressed yourself during the interview. It doesn't really matter that how well you know things. It's really matter like how willingly you want to solve some of the problem which is there around in the world, and which is like really important in current scenario to be solved, something like this. I mean by that is like problem which can have a really big impact on the society. If you have that kind of overview or that kind of career aspects, then it's really hard to get into these interview, I would say that. So for a CGPA, it was just a kind of a cutoff. But in my case, interview was a really major point to get through this. So if somebody is good in interview skills, so I would say like if your application have interview part, then it is easier to get through the application.
Okay, thanks a lot, Nitin, Anisha, and Sanjay for the nice insight. I think we could make like a bottom line that yes, CGPA is important, but don't get upset that if it's lower. There are a couple of other things which are going to come up, and I think we are going to focus next on those things exactly, because those are the couple of things which include one of the I don't know whether people are afraid of it or not, but that's something which might you could obviously relate to is the GRE and TOEFL and the GMAT scores and all that. So the GRE, I mean, just a basic overview for the people who don't know it. I'm pretty sure most of you do that. So we are most of the universities, if at all, need GRE general scores. Okay, GRE general requires a quant and an like a quantitative aptitude and a verbal aptitude test. And we have a couple of videos at Reticulum. Simran would post those links in the chat. You can check out those videos, especially about how to prepare for GRE. And GRE subject is rather pretty rare, majorly for some PhD programs. So that's not something which is, you should be too much concerned about. However, one more important thing is that many of the institutes have started waiving it. So at least for biological programs like chemical sciences and all that. So the GRE is something like that. TOEFL and IELTS, from what we know, from what our experience says, it's more like a language exam, mostly for cutoffs. And we are going to hear more from the guests about these things. And GMAT, from what I know, is specifically for MEM, MIM programs and also useful for MBA. So as I said, let's hear more from the guests. So we have a couple of questions again targeted towards the guest regarding this, that as I asked the same question. So I'm pretty sure you must have, Sanjay, you must have given GRE, right? So how important do you think your GRE score was? Because I think your CGPA was pretty high. So do you think they really care about the GRE?
Unfortunately, at ETH they did, because ETH has a pretty tight cutoff, at least for my program. For programs like mechanical engineering and let's say energy science, whatever, they didn't really look at CGPA. But then in their requirements, it was specifically stated that a quantitative score of 165 and a verbal score of 155 must be obtained, along with an AWA of 4.4. 3.5, yeah, 3.5. I'm not sure if they'd reject purely based on such grounds of someone getting low scores on a GRE exam, since it's all just, it has, to be really honest, the GRE exam has nothing to do with what we're studying, actually. Perhaps for courses like physics and pure science courses, you have GRE subject-specific courses, GRE subject-specific exams. But for engineering-based courses, I don't know how the verbal is really even relevant. And I've heard from a lot of professors on Quora and Reddit as well that they don't really look at the GRE scores at all in the United States. So what they normally do is they have like a cutoff. So let's say if the quantitative score is above 160, wait, it is out of 170, right? I forgot. 170, yeah.
Yeah, it's 170.
So if it's above 160, then you'll be through. I think for any Indian or for any Asian, for that matter, getting a score of 160 is very trivial. Whereas they don't really look at the verbal score, because our first language is not really English, right? We all learn in Hindi, Tamil, and so on. So that's what the professors in the US have mentioned. They perhaps have a cutoff for the quantitative.
Sanjay, I think we lost you there. Yeah, I think, is it just me, or Simran, could you
Yeah, I think there's some technical issues, so maybe we can get insights from other guests then.
Oh, yeah, he's back. He's back. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So as I was saying, like as the COVID situation came into picture, the problem is that there was a lot of fraudulent activities that have been going on with the GRE exam, and people, it is not really considered that important nowadays. So many universities are saying it's optional, especially the US universities. But then ETH still has it compulsory, as far as I know. And as far as TOEFL is concerned, most US universities will admit those who have a TOEFL score of, let's say, 90 plus, and it's not that hard to get. But ETH has a very, very strict cutoff of 100. If you get below, they've clearly mentioned, even if a score of, let's say, 1 or 2, just because it's near to 100, still we would not admit you. You have to get a score of 100 to get an admit over here. So some schools have it compulsory, some schools have it optional. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Sanjay. I think it's very clear that one needs to really have a look into the application requirements. They mostly will mention it. I think TU Munich also has this kind of a requirement, from what I know. They have 160 plus or something for the quant. Yeah. So Anisha, what are your insights about TOEFL and GRE in general? Actually, GMAT, rather I should say.
Sure. Yeah. So For MEM, actually, even GRE is accepted. So in the US, you have something called STEM-based programs. So whatever program is STEM-based, like your master's with thesis and even engineering management, all these schools accept GRE. Whereas if you look at Europe admissions for a master's in management or an MBA in US or Europe, they strictly need a GMAT. But a lot of MIM programs are also opening up to considering GRE scores. But if you're specifically applying for MIM, I would still recommend you take GMAT because they will simply convert your GRE score into a GMAT scale, which doesn't do much justice. So MIM, MBA take GMAT, MEM or any other masters take the GRE. And I completely echo Sanjay's point about the GRE being not so important of late. So I can tell you, Duke itself has waived off GRE for the MEM program since last year because schools are realizing more and more that GRE is nothing fully relevant to judging how qualified a candidate is for that program. It simply forms a threshold. When I applied, I had to take the GRE, and as long as you have a score that's above 315 or in that range, it's pretty much definitely gonna get your foot into the door and get you to the next level of evaluation in the application process. And coming to TOEFL, yeah, TOEFL is also pretty easy for most of us because we've studied in English throughout undergrad, and we just need to do a little bit of prep for the exam, and we should comfortably get a decent score there. And yeah, in the GRE, while the analytical writing section isn't really that important for science or STEM-based programs, if you're doing well on it, it's just an added benefit for your profile because AW is all about writing essays, and if you're able to structure your essay well, I'm sure that you'll have a not so difficult time writing your SOP also because that's also just essay essentially. So yeah, in a nutshell, GRE is important, but don't let it become the sole focus of your application because that's just a threshold criteria.
Okay. Thanks, Anisha, for the insights. So Nitin, would you, from what I know, you did not write GRE, but what are your, do you have any of the peers who have appeared for that? How is the school's, opinion towards GRE in general? And
So
TOEFL also.
So in my case, like specifically for these Max Planck schools, so when these schools started in 2018, so at that point they had both GRE, normal GRE one and the subjective GRE. They had both, but in the first year they realized that they didn't get that many applications, or it didn't make any sense for them. So after that, they completely like remove this from their application process, but they only kept TOEFL or IELTS. So right now they only have this IELTS requirement. And for that, like even though you have been selected in the program, you can submit your IELTS score afterwards. So it's just a requirement for them. So right now it is like you need minimum 6.5 overall, and individual like these sections you need minimum of 6, something like this. And what I remember, like when I was applying in some Canadian universities, there they have like something like 7 and 7.5 band score. So in Canada there are like higher band, but in Europe it's 6 or 6.5, and it's really easy to get these kind of scores, especially in IELTS. I don't know about TOEFL, but IELTS is much easier, I would say.
I think TOEFL and IELTS are similar, right?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, like now there is like we have like 3 different schools in 3 different locations. So as you said, like Munich also have this GRE requirement, and due to like a lot of this paperwork in Germany, right? So they are not able to get rid of this requirement of GRE, and because of that, they are still not able to start this program there.
Okay.
So
Yeah, cool. Good trivia information, I would say. Okay, now let's move to the more complicated parts of the application. And I think one of the thing which everyone is working on and it's relevant to the job, MS application, PhD, whatever, is the CV/resume. So we are not going to differentiate between CV and resume over here. That's a arguable debate. Let's not do that. But most of these documents have like a, the key aspects of each document consist of these important sections. Like you have your education, you have your experience, which could be research experience or your work experience or volunteer experience and things like that. Then comes your publications or presentations if you are, let's say, participating in an IEEE conference and things like that, or you have published in certain journals. Then comes your technical skills or your communication skills, transferable skills, and these kind of aspects. Awards and achievements, extracurricular, which could also be, which is included, again, depending on what kind of program you're applying for. Courses is something which at least I have got to heard that would not put it there because transcript is exactly the same thing. And yes, we do have a couple of YouTube channels on the YouTube videos on these aspects also. I would also like to maybe just to give a brief overview of what generally it looks like and whether you can find samples or not. So there are thousands and billions of maybe samples over there online, and this is a similar sample which we've also taken from the Stanford Career Support website. So you can see the general overview, but let's now get into the experience from the guests directly. So now I would like to ask a couple of questions to the guests regarding the CV part. So first question maybe towards Anisha this time would be that you said that you have worked in Exxon, right? So how a job CV is different from a master's or a MIM or MEM CV? What are your take on that?
So although I worked, but I at the end of the day I was applying for a master's program, so I would still orient my resume towards how you would apply to a school. If you were to apply to a job, it kind of makes sense to include those relevant coursework also, because it shows your employer what you learned in school. But if you're applying for a master's program, fully agree that there's not much need to mention your courses, because your transcripts already cover that. One really good point that could add in your CV because of WorkX is leadership experience. So say you're applying for a management program like MEM or MIM, and you worked in a slightly technical role or you did a technical degree, but then you want to bring out these leadership aspects also, because all of the management programs value stuff like how well you're able to collaborate, communicate, work in teams, or just lead a team. So all your extracurriculars from college, like say you were the coordinator for your college fest, or you were leading something in a student club, and then say at work you took some initiatives outside of your day-to-day responsibilities, then your CV is the perfect place to bring these points out, make them stand out. And whenever you're writing a resume, one advice that's always worked is talk about what you did, how you did, and what impact it resulted in. So you could write, like, say, you were the coordinator for a fest. So you can say how you took up this role. You managed a team of X number of people, and you collaborated across multiple functions or something along those lines. And finally, you end the sentence by saying what impact it had. Like, say, it helped increase the participation by some 20%. So if you mention that, you're really bringing out the essence of what you did. Otherwise, your resume just reads like a list of responsibilities which you had. And that doesn't make your resume stand out from the crowd.
Great insight, Anisha. Thanks a lot. So Sanjay, what's your take on that? I assume you directly applied for the masters after your bachelor's. So what are the key important things that you would highlight in your CV or resume?
As far as the CV is concerned, there are a lot of things that are to be considered, because ultimately, see, that is the what I feel is that the admissions committee look at that. because the SOP takes a lot of time to read. So what they do is they quickly glance through the CV. What has he done? What all are the important things that have been done? One very important thing, especially from what I've seen Indians do, is they just keep going on and on. Like for instance, let's say they did some internship.
Sanjay, we're having some technical issues, I guess. Is it okay if you just switch off your video? Would that be fine? I think we lost him, I guess. Okay, maybe till the time we wait, Nitin, could you continue? What's your take on the for your program? How is it different for your job for your CV? Yeah.
So yeah, whatever Sanjay was saying, like normally in India, Indian students keep on talking about a lot of things which they did during their bachelor's and which is not even relevant for the program they are applying for. So for example, I did some kind of projects and stuff, and at some point I was mentioning them, but as soon as I had like some other kind of experience, like I had some research paper coming out, something like this, so I start removing them, which is irrelevant. So you have to be really concise with your CV. So it shouldn't be like 2-3 pages long describing everything what you did there. It should be like whatever internship you did, maybe 1 or 2 line what you did and how impactful it was for the purpose you was doing it. That's it. Explaining part comes in SOP. So there you can express whatever you want to express. Or but in a CV, be it really precise what you did, how it is useful for, like you have to be really smart in that. For example, you have 7 or 8 different experiences or different kind of courseworks you have, like uh, online. A lot of people do this online courses and stuff, they also put that on the CV. But if it is irrelevant from the program you are applying for, please don't mention that, because it is not going to have any impact on your application. So I would really say that keep it short as possible, maybe 1 page, or if you have too many things to say about, maybe 1.5 page or so, but express yourself in SOP, because there you have a lot of space to talk about.
Okay, thanks, Nitin. So we have Sanjay back. So Sanjay could continue now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The looks like the internet connection here is quite unstable.
Right.
So I think Mr. Nitin has already mentioned most of the important points, not to go on and on with unnecessary jargon. So mention what you learned quickly, like in a crisp format, like within 2 to 3 bullet points in each internship or each project for that matter. And most importantly, if you've done online courses, just mention them. I've seen many CVs where people go on and on like as though the online course is a project in itself. So that they must not do. My suggestion is to what a standard CV looks like is you have to start with your name and your contact details, and then go on to your education. Do not mention your 10th standard. Your 10th standard is completely irrelevant. In fact, I'd say don't even mention 12th, but ETH requires, in my case, it required the 12th mark sheet. So some universities may require, some universities may not. I'd say it's a waste of space. I mean, they want to know what you did in your undergrad, not in your 10th and 12th. And then comes the coursework that you've done, relevant coursework. If let's say you're applying to computer science and then you mention coursework as, let's say, signals and systems, it makes no sense. And then talking about your achievements, mention scholastic achievements, let's say from 12th standard. Let's say if you won the school award in board exams or something, that's fine. But mentioning something in, let's say, I don't know, 10th standard or something, it makes no sense. It's quite far, I mean, a lot of time has passed. And you can mention your research awards. And then I don't know if people would have publications at that time, but mentioning publications is a huge plus. But then ensure that they are Scopus indexed and not in some random journals. Many people publish in some random journals like International Journal of Science Engineering Research. There are a lot of these bogus predatory journals that people tend to publish on just for the sake of getting a publication count. So that you should not do at all, because as I said, they glance through the CV in detail and they see publications in bold And then right below that, they're seeing some random journal which they've never heard of, that immediately creates a negative impact. And in my opinion, if I were in the admissions committee, I'd immediately reject that person. So yeah, we have to be crisp and mention those things that are most important. And then finally, like as far as extracurriculars are concerned, I'd say that again, maintain it within, let's say, quarter a page. Even if you have many extracurriculars, to be really honest, they care more. Universities care more about your research work when it comes to applications towards PhD. And even MS by research, like in top universities like MIT, they don't really care if you're in the dance group, or no offense to anyone if anyone's there in the dance group. Of course, it's good to have a hobby or something, but mention that as a single line. Yeah. And if you're there in some tech fest or cultural fest, mention it in a crisp way. Do not keep talking about my responsibilities. I bought this guy from Singapore and he performed a great art activity, and then many people liked it, and so on and so forth. So yeah, don't make it like an SOP, as Mr. Nitin already mentioned. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Sanjay, for the insights. Couple of things which maybe I could also add. So first of all, regarding the predatory journals, yes, that's something which is extremely important. Please keep a lookout for that. Only if it's SCI listed, and it should be relevant journal. Don't only go for this impact factor thing, because yeah, that's something. Always discuss with your professors and all that before getting any publications and stuff like that. And regarding the aspects of mentioning the extracurriculars, I actually agree with Anisha, and I agree also with Sanjay. For PhD, it becomes irrelevant, because I saw a couple of computer science professors and a couple of biological science professors. They simply say that, dude, I just want your research. I want you in the lab. I really don't care about anything else. However, if you go for the job applications, if you go for something like industrial, or management aspect roles, they really care about the people management skills. Exactly what Anisha pointed out. You should be able to deal with people. You should be able to handle the team better. So there are two different things. So make sure that what kind of a CV you want and what kind of a position you're applying for. Okay. That's a really good insight. Moving on to the next question, because we have a couple of people from different countries. So I have a simple question: that how different is the CV if one is applying for, multiple places? The students applying for EU, is he or she is also applying for Singapore, for example, or applying for Canada and US. So maybe Sanjay, you could say that. How exactly are they different? What are the key points which make a big difference?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because I had the same doubt as I was applying to ETH. That was in Switzerland. I applied to Delft. That was in the Netherlands. I applied to Toronto. That was in Canada. And then I applied to 4 US universities. So again, yeah, it all has to be tailored individually to the university specifications. For instance, ETH really cares about coursework, number one. It cares about your GPA. It cares about your rank relatively in your department. And then it cares about what university you're from. So mentioning your relevant coursework is most important. So for instance, for ETH, I had a separate CV. I mentioned all the courses which they wanted, so that they don't have to go through my transcripts. So you have to look at the university specifications and tailor it according to that. US universities generally do not have such strict specifications. They are quite lenient. But if look at the graduate level courses, for instance, when I applied to Georgia Tech, I looked at the graduate level courses for control. They had neural networks and fuzzy control. I already did that in my bachelor's. So I thought, okay, let me mention that in my relevant coursework section in my CV, so that they think that I'm already prepared for it. So when they know that you already have those courses and you're well prepared, you definitely have a greater chance of making it through. Again, you have to just tailor it to each and every university's individual specifications. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Maybe then we can move to Nitin, because Nitin, you said that you also did a MTech in IIT Kharagpur, and you also applied to Germany later. So, I mean, what were the different changes that you made to your CV and resume during those things?
Like during the IIT, like you don't really have to submit any CV or something like this. It's pretty straightforward. Like you go through GATE examination, right? And after that you have interview in some IITs, and in some cases you don't even have interview. So at this point, I was making already CV for applying in different universities. But after this 1 year, yeah, like because I applied it again, because I really wanted to come here in this program. Like this is the one I was looking for. So I applied in this program again. But at this point, I did some changes. Like I removed all the things which I used to put before, like these posters I uh, presented in some conferences and stuff. So this I removed. I only put like all the relevant papers. And as Sanjay was saying, like they really wanted to have like certain kinds of credit in mathematics and some physics and chemistry and some biological courses. So before I didn't know that much. So I only put like some core courses in my CV. So after 1 year, I realized that, okay, they are looking for these different courses from interdisciplinary part. So after that, I mentioned all the interdisciplinary course we had in NIT Warangal. So like we also have in first year, we like basically we take courses from all the engineering branches we have. We also take physics and chemistry. So I mentioned that we had basic chemistry and basic physics and stuff. And after that, it was much easier to get through the application process. So as Sanjay was saying, like you have to look towards the requirement of your uh, applying, whichever university you are applying, and change accordingly. You don't have to change too much. You only have to change in relevant courses part and some your experience part or something like this.
Okay. Thanks, Nathan. So Anisha, because you applied to US, from what I've heard, I'm not sure whether you applied to Europe also, but over there, are there some major differences if you apply for masters in MEM, masters rated programs in Europe and US? Are there major changes in the CV?
Yeah, I actually did apply to a couple of schools in Europe for the MIM program, and but my main focus was on the MEM programs. So one thing I've seen done differently in the US is their GPA system. So over here it's out of 4, whereas in India it's out of 10. So again, like Nitin and Sanjay said, check out what your school's requirement is. Every program has its own page of application requirements. Read that very carefully and see if they're asking you to convert your GPA. Then you have a lot of free calculators online like Scholaro, or you have paid evaluations like WES. So you could send in your transcripts to these and they'll give you a converted GPA on a scale of 4. So if your school requires it, then mention it. If not, then just go ahead with the standard GPA that you have in your Indian undergrad. And apart from that, in management based programs, they're pretty flexible. And we've discussed before, just make sure your CV, your resume is relevant and doesn't talk about like random stuff which make no impact to the program that you're applying for. And at least in case of all countries' management programs, we are honestly just applying for a graduate level course. So it's kind of necessary that you tailor your resume to just one page. Because even people with like 7-8 years of experience are able to put their CV into just one page. So we should definitely be able to do that. And as you start getting more and more achievements, start taking out the ones which are really old and not so relevant anymore. That's something that stays common wherever you apply to.
Thanks a lot, Anisha, for this insight about the management programs. So, last two questions about this topic regarding CV. First of all, would be something like that. It's maybe some. I think Simran could also clarify that. In terms of personal information on the CV, I've seen people in Europe having a picture. So, I mean, do you guys, all the guests over here, do you have any idea about how different is it in US, for example, or in other countries like Canada and as compared to Europe? What personal information should you actually put on the CV? Maybe Anisha, you could start.
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. So I personally did not include a photo. However, I included a link to my LinkedIn. I mentioned my contact number, email address, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you link your CV to the LinkedIn, then they can anyway check that out and get a picture. But otherwise, it wasn't really a big necessity because it just takes up more space. And when you have only one page to fit in everything, you might as well make the best use of it.
Okay, thanks. Sanjay, do you have any opinion on that? Having a picture in, because I think in European Union they do that, or?
As Anisha correctly mentioned, I think it's better to include the LinkedIn URL on your CV. And then, of course, you can, I think you have the option to add a photo on your LinkedIn profile. So they can look at that. And then at the same time, it also adds some more opportunity. Let's say, for example, you've written a lot of essays on LinkedIn and you post regularly. And then they also get to see that as well. So they know that, okay, this guy posts something and, you know, he has something else apart from academics. Just something that's just trivial. But as you mentioned, you don't need to put a photo on your CV. I mean, that's just for, I think in my university, they did it for companies, but I really don't think it's required for academic CVs. Yeah.
Okay.
You can put your LinkedIn URL. Yes.
Simran, one thing maybe I can ask you, because you had your experience a couple of years in US and then you came back and applied for a PhD at ETHZ and Austria and all that. So did you put your picture on your LinkedIn CV or just a LinkedIn profile?
So actually, I have a mixed opinion in this. I totally agree with Anisha and Sanjay both that we should definitely put your email address, your LinkedIn URL, probably your contact number, these basic, contact details information. But when I was applying to the US, I was strictly told by experienced people that you should not put your picture because they don't want to judge you on face and they want to judge you by the profile. But contrary, in Europe, when I was applying, one of my supervisors mentioned, at least when you're applying for PhD directly to the, through lab or professor, through their openings, you should include a picture because that's something which was very traditional in Europe, and some of the professors are still into it. So I'm not sure if it is really relevant for typical university graded master's program. But if you're applying for internships, for example, you're directly approaching a professor or going through their lab website vacancy and then applying to there, then probably adding a picture may benefit you. But it's a very gray area. So one thing I for sure know that US does not like it, be it professor, be it universities. And in Europe, universities may not like it, but professor might prefer it.
Okay, good. Maybe then we can actually move to the last question, and something which is probably on many people's mind is that who do you get your CV evaluated from? So Nitin, maybe you could say, how did you get your CV? Who did you approach for evaluating your CV?
Like two persons are already there whom I contacted. So yeah, okay. Of course, Simran, and you. Like normally I ask you, like my seniors, I ask, and sometimes my friends also, just to read, like not CV, SOP in some cases, like does it make sense to you? Did you understood what I'm trying to say? Oh, okay. And sometimes also to the people who are completely from a different background, just to let me know that, okay, if somebody from different field who doesn't have any experience in my field, if that person is reading, will he understand what I'm trying to say? Because most of the time what happens is the person who is shortlisting the applications, they are not professors, they are coordinators, right? So in that case, they first read your SOP, and then it is really useful if you try to get your SOP read by someone which is not from your background, whether they will understand it or not. Yeah. So this is the place I go normally.
Okay. So I think for CV as such per se, your answer is like, just approach seniors, I would assume. I mean, so many people have this, many students from what I met in my peer group had this weird, they were afraid that we should not share your CV. So Sanjay, do you think that you would rather share it with your peers or your seniors or your professors even for getting that evaluated and get some comments?
There are two aspects over here. What I feel is that usually when I include my projects in my CV, I include the link to the reports. At the same time, also my bachelor's dissertation has a link over there. So those things are only for the professors, which I'm sure they are very ethical and they won't cheat, and I'm pretty sure. And whomever I send it to, I believe them. So if they're my really close friends, I send it to them. So, but then what I'd suggest is that if you really want to send your CV to, let's say, your seniors or someone like that, send it as a photo. Do not send it as a PDF. So, or remove all the links to the reports or to the thesis. So if you send it like that, then I think there should be no issues, because what can be copied from a CV? At max the template, and many people have more or less the same template. Yeah. So there's not going to be much of a loss unless you include reports. And what if they ultimately take your ideas and put it for a publication? Yeah, there is a possibility that those things happen. So remove all the links and just send it as a photograph, or just send it as a PDF that is without the drive links. Yeah. Okay. That's what I do.
Cool. That's actually a good suggestion. Anisha, have you gotten your CV evaluated from your workplace? Probably, right? Because when you applied for
okay, you're asking someone else?
I was actually asking Anisha, but yeah, you can also answer that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I got it evaluated by one senior who is currently a master's student at Carnegie Mellon. Okay. Apart from that, I felt my CV was, I think I always looked at it from the point of view of an admissions committee person. You have 2,000 CVs to review. Can you go through this quickly? What is the gist that you're getting from this particular CV? These things you must think of, rather than thinking from the eyes of the student. You should think from the eyes of the admissions committee. So I didn't really ask for reviews from people. I just looked at it by myself and I thought, okay, as a professor, what do I think right now? Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Anisha, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, sure. Sanjay brought up a really valid point about putting yourself in the shoes of the person to whom you're sending the resume. Yeah. So if you have access to someone who is like a recruiter or someone who has experience in admissions committees, you're really lucky. Send them your resume, get it reviewed, get their opinion. And even I resorted to peer reviews. So I sent it across to a bunch of my friends from work, friends from undergrad, and seniors from undergrad. Honestly, if you're still studying and you have a good network of seniors, use it to the max that you can, because there are people who have been in your same situation, so they have learning experience from that, and most of the seniors are more than happy to help. So you can get it reviewed from them. And even at your workplace, if you have a mentor or you have someone in a leadership position in your network whom you can connect with, get it reviewed from these people, because they have been in panels which recruit or which review CVs, so they know what they're looking for and they can give you an exact idea of that. And in fact, that point which I brought up earlier about having to mention an impact of what you did in your resume versus just including responsibilities, that was a feedback I got from someone who reviewed. So I sent my resume to someone who works in the industry, and they actually told me that your resume looked like you've just mentioned all your points of responsibility, add some impact that it resulted in. So then I completely switched it over and made it look different. So don't worry, don't be scared when you're sending it for review, because it's better to get bad feedback from these people than to get a reject from your university.
Yeah, I really like that last sentence. That's really nice. Cool. That's really great insight. So we all agree that, use your network for getting it done. And yeah, I think we are also trying to do that with Reticulum, utilize this network also. Okay, then let's move on to the next very critical part of the application, which is the statement of purpose or the personal statement. So, I mean, generally it could be of 1 or 2 page, but all the universities' requirements are clearly indicated. it could be 1000 words, it could be exactly 1 page. So if it's 1 page, don't make it like text size of 8 or something, and then, you know, try to trick them. Make it 11. 11 is the most normal accepted one. Okay. And don't make the borders like that. So I think these are very basic things that we know of. And many of the schools ask very specific questions. You know, they have like 4 or 5 questions in the form of a paragraph. Copy that and answer them. The general structure, which most of you have already gone through or writing an SOP currently, must be knowing that, you know, you have a hook, which you need as an opening paragraph. Then you have the background and the future goals that you have. Then you try to connect your experience with your future goals. And that's where the program or the university comes into play. And you have to explain them, you know, this university, this program, or this, you know, this PhD will be useful as a bridging thing. And then you can eventually end up with like, what exactly can you bring to the university in general. One important thing is that do not restate your CV, but rather tell the story on which your CV is based on. You know, your CV is the trailer, but the story is here. Okay. And something which is very obvious is that there should be no formatting error, no errors in terms of grammatical and these things like that. So after having touched the basic overview, let's move on to our guest's opinion regarding a couple of important questions regarding that. And I think the first question comes up, which is the first question, that is, how do you actually start writing the SOP when you see it? So Anisha, maybe you can start it. How did you actually start it? What was your strategy? Not the opening, but how did you start it at least? You have the blank page, so go ahead.
Yeah, that's such a great question, because this is literally the dilemma of every person planning to apply for masters. So when I was applying, I knew that all these deadlines for the MEA programs are coming up around December and January. So I had so their applications open pretty early on, like as early as July, August, September. So just go to the target schools that you want to apply for, create an account on their application portal, get the questions which they're asking, and then it just stays at the back of your mind. And I kind of made Google Keep my best friend during the application process. So there were times where you're literally just I was walking from home to go to work, and then suddenly some point comes across in your head like, hey, I did this the other day at work, and it was like a really good result in a project. So that's something I should talk about in my SOP. So immediately write it down, put it on your notes. And it's a continuous process. Like over a lot of months, you get all your points in. And finally, the day when you sit to actually write your essay, just collect all of this and give it a structure. So it's a pretty long process, and over time you just get an idea of like where you could start from. But yeah, you will have that eureka moment at some point, but just make sure you note down all your ideas, because if you sit one day and decide today I'm going to write my SOP, you really feel like I have a blank slate, I have no clue where to begin. So make sure you keep capturing points.
That's a really good suggestion, to have all the things that you have been doing throughout a couple of months and jotting them together and then expanding. So Nitin, would you like to add on what was your strategy when you started your SOP?
Yeah, I completely agree with Anisha. It's like really, really long process to write a SOP. So in the beginning, when I was trying to write a SOP, most of the time I was doing procrastination. It's like just sitting around thinking, what should I write? So, but at some point, like I had these bullet points which I made, like I have done all these things. This is why I'm interested in the research and why I want to pursue this thing. So I had these, I thought about it, like why I really want to go for a master's and something like this. And after that, like I sat down, wrote something like some 200 words on one day, and some, like I didn't do it in one day. It took some time for me. And after that, I sent my first SOP to some of my senior, and they told me, what did you wrote? This is not how you write SOP, but that's how it started. So after that, like I improved on it a lot, and around 6 months or so, I had like something which I can really submit. So, but I still keep on improving my SOP. Like whenever I have something new added to my experience, like I change something. So I keep on doing it normally, even though I don't have to apply now in near future. But it's really good to keep on writing something in your SOP. So at the end, when you really have to apply somewhere, then you have something already written. So if somebody is in third year of their undergraduate, I would suggest, like, even though you have like 1 year of time to apply for some 1 or 1.5 year of time to apply for some application, maybe start uh, writing some of the point. At least you will have some introductory or part written already, even though you can later change some of the experience you will have in the future.
Great insights about your draft one SOP, Nitin. So Sanjay, how did you get your draft one? How did you start it?
Okay, so it all has to do with the introduction. Once you have the introduction part, I think it's all an easy flow later on. I actually shared a LinkedIn post some, I think 2-3 weeks back about what to do and what not to do when you're starting an SOP. I'll tell you what not to do. For heaven's sake, do not start with something like, ever since I was a child, I used to take out radio components and put them back. And that's when I realized that I have to do a PhD in electrical engineering when I was 2 years old. I mean, all this mini Einstein startings, that the US people are very familiar with, and they know it's all garbage. That is one thing. Another thing is putting quotes by Napoleon, putting quotes by, I don't know, Socrates or Aristotle, all these people. I mean, a lot of people do that. And the third thing is flowery language. All this high vocabulary stuff that one can search on Google, just find the synonym of this. Yeah, you should not do that. You should be as normal as possible. So that's the main point that has to be carried. In my case, I like control systems because in my third year, the professor was really good at it, at teaching this particular field. And he gave a quote and I quoted him. But that sounds more realistic. Like control systems is used in each and every aspect. Like it has these many applications, not only in healthcare, but it has applications in process control, in the industry, in robotics and aerospace field, and so on and so forth. So I put a simple quote like that about him. So that is fine. As long as it's realistic. You don't need to make up anything. You don't need to like put up a false quote of your professor or anything. But as long as it sounds natural, why are you doing this? That's the question. Why am I interested in computer science? Why am I interested in controls, electrical engineering, whatever? You have to think about it for some time. What is it that really fascinates me in this field? So put that in the first paragraph. And then second paragraph, you can talk about what you've done to justify that interest. Some projects that you've mentioned in your CV. In your CV, you're not supposed to mention it in detail, like maybe 3 bullet points. Even in the SOP, do not keep going on and on, like I achieved an accuracy of so and so percentage. I did this, I did that. You don't need to do all those things. Just tell what you've learned. Like in my case, what I learned was that these sort of controllers were not doing good enough for nonlinear systems. So I switched to neural network based or machine learning based controlling actions. That worked well. That's fine. You don't need to be too technical. At the same time, do not be too personal. Like I once saw a beggar on the road, and then she was so poor. So that's when I decided I'm going to do a master's and I'm going to earn a lot and I'm going to donate back to society when I'm finished doing my master's. Yeah, that is way too personal. So one must put up a good border between the personal stuff and all the technical stuff. So that's what the art of writing an SOP is. Do not be way too technical. I mean, this is not a research paper. At the same time, this is not some 10th standard essay that you're writing. So you must put up a fine, mixture of both elements, and then try to put up your projects, and then talk about your internships in slight details, like 100 to 150 words, and then 1 or 2 like significant achievements, like what you've done. Do not talk about, okay, I got this much marks in my 12th standard. No, doesn't make sense. Like if you want some research awards, then that's good. That's great. Mention them in your SOP. And certain important things, perhaps you can put it in bold. Like I published a paper. And what did you face? You should not say I merely published a paper, but what was the contribution in it? There are so many research articles with 6-7 authors. How do the admission committee folks know what your contribution was towards the paper? So that you can mention it over there. And then finally, this is the most important, probably and this is where many people like forget about it. Like, what do you want to do after your masters? Do you want to go into a job, or do you want to be in academia? That's important. Another thing is, some universities give prompts. I think all universities give prompts like, why do you want to do this course? And that's another place where many people screw up. Like, they have this template for each and every, for all universities. I want to do this because so and so course looks good, and this professor has so many research awards. Done. No, that should not be the case. Do not put up a fixed template. That is my main suggestion. In your SOP, we should never put a fixed template for all universities. Rather, tailor it according to each and every university specification. Yeah.
Great, Sanjay. That was actually, you answered the two questions, to be honest. So one next question, which was actually coming up, was how do you find the hook? And you already mentioned that you had your third year professor who had a really nice quote. So that was the really cool thing about that. So maybe I can actually now direct that question about finding the hook to Anisha and later on to Nitin. So Anisha, how did you find the hook or the introductory, the paragraph to catch the outcome there?
Yeah, this was a pretty funny experience for me. One day during this application time, it was October, I think for Diwali, I was traveling back from Bangalore to Mumbai, where I stay. So I was legit just sitting on the flight and again thinking through what a particular university's prompt was. And then I got that moment of realization that there's all the stuff that I had done until undergrad and how I wanted to broaden my horizons. So I started working with an MNC, and then moving to the US would just help me widen that experience across different cultures. So that's when I kind of realized like what I needed to begin my essay with. And completely second Sanjay's point that adding random quotes just to make it look like you read or you're philosophical, that doesn't make sense, because you want the SOP to be about who you are as a person and bring that out to the admissions committee. So if you personalize it like that, then it makes it stand out. But yeah, I mean, don't delve into too many personal details that are not relevant. So for every university also, you don't need to use the same hook, because some essay may be different. Like some schools had multiple essay questions. One was about what is your motivation to join the school, and the other was about explaining some kind of project where you had an impact on the community. So don't use the same intro for both. Try to tailor it to what you're applying for. And yeah, you can have that moment of realization anytime, so make sure you capture it.
That's really great, Anisha. Thanks. So Nitin, what was your opening statement? Did you have your quote from someone, or how was it?
No, it's a quote from myself.
Okay, that's interesting. So yeah,
No, I don't have any
us
kind
through.
of quote. Quote per se is just like how first opening paragraph I have is like why I am motivated to do research. Like a lot of people are doing some kind of job and stuff, but why I am interested in this. Like for that, I have thought about a lot. Like really, what kind of impact I want to have on society in my field, especially. So basically, this is what I talk about in my introductory paragraph. So there is no quotes, there is nothing like that. So that's how I started my SOP. And yeah, normally after that, you talk about like, okay, you have this kind of motivation, then what you have done towards this motivation until now. So this is kind of a middle part of your SOP. And in the end, you talk about like, okay, now you are applying for this particular program. So what kind of experience you will get from it, which will improve uh, your your skills to move towards your goal. So you have certain goals which you mentioned in your SOP. So how this program would be beneficial and how program will benefit from you. So it's like a give and take. relationship in the ending part. But I also completely agree with one of the point from Sanjay that a lot of people, what they do, they send around the same SOP, especially when they are applying for some PhD position and even in the same department with two different professors. So one of the professor told me that, yesterday I received one SOP which I already saw 1 week before. So it's really, really hilarious that because a lot of professor in the same department, even in the same institute, they talk a lot because there are always some kind of meeting going on. And if they receive similar kind of SOP again and again, and then it's not really good because then you will talking about this, you will only change the name of professor that, okay, I am interested in your lab. And after some 1 week or so, you are again asking for another professor from the same department that interested in you. So then you are not trusted anymore, right? You will, even if your SOP and everything was really good, you had some kind of chances to get in that position. After that, it's gone because you broke the trust in first place. So be really particular about where you are sending your SOP and tailor made it accordingly.
Okay, thanks a lot for that insights. And I think we all could agree that, there are a couple of things that one needs to change for each SOP. So do not just send out the templates out there. So maybe coming to the next question, which is similar question to the CV question, is that for SOP, who do you send it to? So maybe Anisha, you could start that. How do you get that evaluated?
Sure, yeah. So I reached out to a similar set of people for my SOP, but in case of my resume, it didn't have much of a personalized angle to it. But yeah, in case of the SOP, it's like you've put your heart out there and really value what you've written. So the first step is to just convince yourself that it's okay if someone tears apart this work of mine that I put in all these months of effort into. Because again, it comes back to the same point. It's better to get all your critical feedback before applying than getting rejected. So I started by sending it to some of my friends who are good at analytical writing. So they could comment on the flow, the structure of the sentences and everything. Whether when you read the essay, does it look like I'm talking about random points at random times, or is there a good flow to it? So sending it to your peers who are good at that kind of stuff helps. Next, you can, if you have friends who are already pursuing your target programs, like if I knew a bunch of folks who were doing engineering management or had graduated, I sent it to them because they know what I did in the program. So whether the stuff that you're writing will actually contribute to the program, they can help you evaluate that part. And I even sent it to my parents just to get their idea on whether I was being true to myself while I was writing, and it definitely helps. Other than that, I think I just sent it to a few people who are also doing the master's applications, because you're all in the same boat, and you really don't have to worry about your thoughts or work getting stolen, because this is your SOP and nobody else can write the same experience that you had over all these years. So definitely get it reviewed, because you've spent so many hours of your time writing it that sometimes you just miss out on finding some points that you probably made a mistake in, some grammatical errors. You just tend to read it over and over so many times that you're too familiar with it. So it gives you a chance to step back out and get some good feedback in.
Okay, great. So Sanjay, would you like to add something? Did you get it evaluated from anyone, or you read it again 100 times?
I actually read it only to my mother
Huh?
because I thought, I know it sounds absurd because my mother is obviously not proficient with engineering. Apart from that, the problem is that right now Many students are also like sending me text messages on LinkedIn to review their SOPs. It takes quite a lot of time to properly review. I mean, a lot of seniors will just say, okay, chalta hai, it looks good enough. It looks good without even reviewing it. But when I review it, like one of my friends is now applying for a master's program, and it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to properly review it. And I don't think a lot of seniors, unless you're really close to them, will spend a lot of time with that. It takes a lot of time to time, effort, and energy to review it. So I didn't bother any of my seniors, and I just read it through by myself and finished the work. Yeah.
Yeah, that actually is really good. I mean, I think it's very important. It takes a lot of time for SOP to be reviewed. Agreed. Nitin, I think, yeah, you send it to us. I agree. But anyone else apart from us?
Yeah, I have sent my SOP to, like, I think I said it in the last part itself that how I do with my SOPs, that normally I send it to my friends, which is not belong to my background. So
It's important to get the overview of the like a normal person out there. Yeah, that's actually a really, really good point. Okay, then let's actually move to the like the last part of the major things, which is the letter of recommendation. Okay, I think we don't need introduction about letter of recommendation, but what I would like to ask a question to maybe let's start with Sanjay about is that who would you ask for a letter of recommendation? Should it be an HOD or like a professor who you actually closely worked with? Who would you pick up?
That's a really good question, because everyone has that doubt when they're applying. The thing is, what I feel is that number one, they should be really close to you, and number two, they should be at least decently well known in their research field. Like they should have some good publications, and they should have gone to some international conferences so that they have good networking. And then thirdly, you should have done at least one project under them. I mean, to be really frank, when someone writes you a letter of recommendation, you just don't want them to write, he did well in class, he got an A grade or S grade, whatever, he got so and so excellent grades, he was studious, and he was regular to class, discipline, blah blah. That is not enough. They want to hear about your research potential. They do not merely want to hear your, okay, this fellow has done well. In fact, there's a very good PDF document I had shared in one of my LinkedIn profiles, wherein a CMU professor clearly mentions that there are two types of letters of recommendation. One is DWIC, did well in class. That's basically counts for a 0 for them. They don't even consider that. They can just keep talking about their scores, like he got 10 on 10 in this, so and so. But that is visible in the transcript, right? You can see their grades in the transcript. So what's the point of mentioning it all over again? So ensure that you're going to such a person who's going to talk about your research potential. And then another thing to look out for is, many professors, this happens in India, many Indian professors do not write their letters of recommendation by themselves. They'll ask the students to draft it. And in that process, what happens is the students, sometimes they draft a crappy letter, like again putting up a lot of overly positive stuff, like he's a god, and he is Einstein's Einstein's third child, and so on. So they make that mistake, and the professors do not have enough time to view all these things. So what they'll do is they'll just immediately send it away. So in that case, you need to be really careful in drafting your LOR. Don't make it a generalized LOR. Like, for example, in my case, the professor whom I sent it to, he immediately sent it to the program. Just imagine if you're asking him to send to 2-3 universities and he just mixes it up just like that. What will the universities think? They'll think either the professor is reckless or the student has sent it instead of him. So I would personally suggest that your referee must be willing to write a strong, just tell them frankly, you must tell them, can you write me a strong letter of recommendation? Because it is simply not enough they write 2 to 3 lines like he was good in this field, he got good grades, that's it. That's not going to do you any good. So can the professor write me a strong letter of recommendation? That's the most important thing. You have to just tell them openly. You have to be open to them. Can you write me a strong letter of recommendation? Here's my CV, here's my SOP for more information if you would like. And then another thing to consider is, can you write it by yourself? Like if you're close enough, then of course you can prepare a draft by yourself and put it up. In my case, I got my letter of recommendation from a professor in Germany. I did my internship, third-year internship in Germany. He wrote it by himself. That's what happens in Europe and the United States normally. They'll spend some half an hour with the student. What are your talents? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And so on. And then based on that, they'll write the letter of recommendation. But in India, it does not happen in that way. In that case, we must be really careful, because as students, we can write SOPs, but we cannot write letters of recommendations. So in that case alone, we must be quite careful when writing the letter of recommendation. Yeah.
Cool. That's a really great. That's really great insight. I agree with all the points over here. Yeah. So Anisha, actually, first the same question to you, but a little bit more in that way. So you, as you already mentioned, you worked in a industry also earlier. So did you only approach your professors, or you also approached your manager or team leader at your workplace? And another thing will be that if you approached your professor because you were outside the college by that time, how did you approach them? Because it gets really difficult to get back, right?
Yes, amazing questions, because this was exactly the thought process that I had, like, how should I start? So actually, when I was in undergrad, I kind of had an idea that at some point in my life, I want to go and do a master's. So you really have to plan your end game from a long time ago. So I made sure that I had a couple of professors in my mind whom I could approach for an LOR sometime down the line when I'm applying. So I kind of made that effort to stay in touch with them even after graduating. Like when I was working in the industry, and say I was working on some project where I was able to use concepts that I learned in class in undergrad, I would actually just send emails to some of those professors how I was able to apply what I learned, and how everything was going. And they were super sweet. They would actually respond and appreciate the fact that a alumnus is trying to stay in touch with the school. So you really have to play your end game like that. So finally, when the time comes that you have to approach them for LOR, you're not appearing out of the blue and saying, hey, look, I took your course 3 years ago. Please write me an LOR now. They know that you exist. They know you've been doing this and that. So they will be more than happy to take your request. And secondly, I did take letters from my place of work. So over there also now, if you're working and you plan to go for masters, you need to see what is the approach of your organization towards people who plan to eventually leave. It can be quite a tricky gray area, because a lot of people, they want you to personally succeed, but from the company's point of view, it's kind of like a loss to them, right, that the employee is leaving. So you need to find that vibe, whether you can ask your project lead, or if you're not able to ask someone you directly reported to, you can ask someone who was a senior but you assisted them in the work. Best is if you're able to ask your manager directly and they're willing to recommend you, then nothing like it, because they have you're a direct report and they can compare you against the rest of the team and give an honest evaluation of how you stood out and how much potential you have and how you demonstrated that in the work that you did. So start finding these people from a few months in advance itself, because it takes some time to build that rapport and then finally ask for the recommendation letter. So make sure that you plan it well in advance. And I did have a bunch of connect meetings with the professors and professionals from whom I took the letter. So I made sure that I explained to them what was my motivation to go ahead and do a master's, what were the types of programs I was applying to, and what kind of qualities would they look for, like, so that it helps them highlight. So you're applying to a management program, it helps them highlight in their letters about how you have leadership skills and how you would be a really good asset to that program. So make sure that you convey all of this to them and stay connected with them through the process. And once it's all done, make sure that you express your gratitude also to them, because they are super busy people. They've taken out time to recommend you. So thank them pretty well.
Okay, that I mean, I think I totally agree with both the points from Sanjay and Anisha. And I mean, Nitin, do you, if you want to add something, I would, one thing maybe you can also comment on that is that because you did not, you spent a couple of months in IIT Kharagpur, right? So did you take any LOR from there, or did you just restricted yourself, let's say, to your student exchange in Poland, not Poland, I think Portugal, right? So things like that. So just a couple of points about that.
Yeah, like I was quite lucky in that. So I didn't have to get any LOR. So for my application
Okay.
where I have applied, so I didn't needed any letter of recommendation. But
Okay.
in case I would have needed one, so I would definitely ask some of the group leader I was working with in Portugal, because there I really worked in a lab. So they knew it very well, how much research profile, research aspects I have, what kind of things I want or something like this. So one thing is like, yeah, professors are really, really busy. So to get things done faster, I would really suggest, normally you, when you work in a lab, you work under some group leader. They are maybe postdoc or sometimes PhD students also. So directly contact them. I still have a lot of contacts in Portugal. So the PhD student postdocs. So if I someday if I need a letter of recommendation, I always can ask them. Yeah. Or now I also have a lot of contact in Germany also. So here also I can ask. So yeah, I would recommend get the LOR from the people where you have done some kind of internship.
Yeah.
If you don't have any choice, that you don't have done any kind of internship in a research environment or something like this, then you can go for the professor which you really like in your college or something like this, which can write a good letter of recommendation, not the ones which is like people have already explained that they just ask you to write it, or then you have to be really, really careful about all these things.
Okay. Okay. That's really good. So yeah, I mean, I think with that, I would like to, because we have covered the major topics, the CV, LOR, and SOP, the key points. I would like to now hand it over to Simran to, to summarize everything and to open the discussion for them. Over to Simran.
Okay, I think we have gotten really amazing insights from all these panel guests. And before we get further into anything, I just want to tell audience, the floor is open for your questions now. You can put it up on chat or unmute yourself and ask them questions. So we can get started with our audience discussion.
By the time the audience are typing in question, I mean, we could just, one thing which would be interesting to most of the people will be that we also have a couple of resources on our Reticulum website. And these profile building resources, career opportunities resources, and things like that, where you can actually have a look. And that would be useful for you in the sense that if you go to the website, you find it over here, that we have the resources section, and over here you have some of the resources which we found useful, let's say for writing the resume and SOP, and these are mostly coming up from very renowned resources. Similarly, we have a couple of them for general career development, so it would be really cool if you could check out. And a request to all our guests also, that if you want any inputs, or sorry, if you want any additions to this, we are more than welcome to put them over here, obviously after acknowledging your contribution. Okay.
Yeah, so I see one question. What is the minimum CGPA for applying MS abroad? For applying for MS abroad. So I think I would ask Sanjay this for his master's in ETH. What would you say? What was the minimum CGPA that you were applying for ETH and for other universities?
Yeah, I actually dedicated an entire LinkedIn post on this. Like many students have asked me, like, is so and so CGPA enough? Yeah, I mean, again, people are still stuck in the transition between high school and university in India, where if you get some JEE rank of, let's say, I don't know, 5,000 or so, you're going to get into an IIT. I mean, it's not like that. There's no fixed CGPA. If there exists, then they'll specifically state it. Even for ETH, they haven't stated it. They said having 8.5 is recommended for India. But then ultimately, ETH is very CGPA oriented. So they usually, as far as electrical engineering is concerned, they take only like 9.5 plus and so on. Again, it all depends on where you're from. I mean, a CGPA at an IIT, maybe if you get something like an 8.5, it would mean something like a 9 at an NIT. And that would mean in a private engineering college, it would mean a 10. So again, there's a huge difference between where you get. There are a lot of factors to be considered. I mean, they just don't look at your CGPA just like that. They look at other things also. As I mentioned, US universities look at everything holistically. Whereas in German universities, again, there are two categories. I'm not very sure of this. There's this open category, NC and NO category. I'm not very sure of that. But there is one category where you can they'll just allow as many students as possible. I'm not very sure. But then again, simply based on your CGPA, nothing can be said. But on the safer side, it's better to have a CGPA of 8 plus, I would say, to apply to universities abroad. Having, let's say, if you have some 9.6 and if you have 9.8, it makes no difference. So when you go above 9, I'd suggest you focus on not extracurriculars, on research work and other things, rather than purely focusing on CGPA, because CGPA alone will not get you anything. Perhaps maybe ETH and a couple of, like Delft and such universities, yes. But in the US, just having your CGPA, no research experience, which means it's pretty useless. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with Sanjay. I think it's not just one particular thing that matters. CGPA does help you to cross that threshold, but in case you don't have a high CGPA, then you have other things by which you can build your profile, as Anisha mentioned earlier. So the next question that we have from Santosh is it okay to get an LOR from a professor before graduation and use it while applying after maybe 2 years? So I think I'm going to give it to Anisha and get inputs from her. What does she think about this?
Please don't do it. Because the things you have done during undergrad, and then 2 years later, you would have done a lot more things. So, you're basically restricting your potential recommender from writing better stuff about you. So if you know you have a particular professor from whom you want LOR, instead of taking it from them in undergrad, build that connection with them during undergrad that, hey, I might go for master's sometime in the future. And since we work closely and I did so-and-so project with you, I would love if you could recommend me then. And just stay in touch with them in those 2 years. It sounds like a pretty difficult task, but just take out 5-10 minutes once in a while, write them an email, stay in touch with them, keep them updated about what you have been doing in those 2 years. Then you'll get an LOR that's so much better than what you might have got 2 years ago.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Please, stay connected with your professors or just write to them, but don't use anything that was written quite a while ago, because definitely, your profile has changed and a lot of things have changed, and you would want that upgraded version of yourself to be recommended than the 2 years before version. The next question is from Kavya. She's asking, would you recommend sharing your SOP with professors for input? So I would ask Nitin, what does he think about this? Would you, share your SOP with some professor for their input?
First of all, I need to know one professor which have this much time to review your SOP. I would be fortunate enough if I have some professor like that. So it pretty much answers the question. So normally professor doesn't have this much time, right? So if that professor have that much time to review your SOP, don't send it, I would say. So it's always better to get it reviewed by your seniors or someone from admission committee if you are somehow lucky to have that kind of friends. But if some of your professor is relative, then why not? Yeah, go get it reviewed, but not most of the time this is not the case. So Yeah.
Yeah, I actually agree with Nitin. It's very hard to find a professor who would have time apart from their grant writing and evaluations and all the meetings to actually review your SOP. But I mean, when I was applying for my PhD, I had some postdoc friends who were, slightly available, kind of my friends. So they reviewed it. So maybe it would be better to ask, your superiors in a way, who have more experience than you, and who are a little freer than professors. So next we have a comment from Radhika. It was a very informative session, got to know about a lot of things. Thank you, Radhika. We appreciate your comment. And she's asking if can we provide her with an insight on scholarship programs over there. So I would, we decided not to touch on scholarships today, but I would quickly ask all three of you, in short, brief, one sentence, if you can tell what you did for your scholarships. So maybe we can start with Sanjay.
I don't know about master programs in the United States. Very few master programs offer scholarships. Perhaps they do offer RATAs. I think Stanford offers the Knight Hensley Scholarship. In my case at ETH, they did offer 2 scholarships, ESOP, Excellence Scholarship. There are 2 Excellence Scholarships, but they were very few, very few people. I think overall, out of all the so many courses that are there, about, let's say, 100 would get it. So you'd have to have a really good statement, like they ask for a thesis proposal, master's thesis proposal, not bachelor's. So you're supposed to have a good master's thesis proposal for that. So some universities do have scholarship applications. As far as I know, for all the US universities I applied, there were no scholarships.
I see. What about you, Anisha? How are you going about this?
Yeah, so the programs that I applied for were all referred to as professional programs, as you call them in the US and in Europe. So bad news, professional programs do not have many scholarships, because these are the kind of like the programs that bring in a lot of money to the university, because students are willing to pay a high tuition for it. So while there aren't too many scholarship opportunities by the program, you can explore some third-party scholarships. Like there's the Tata Foundation one, and I think INLAX has something. There's an Aga Khan scholarship. So, and then there are some professional organizations like Society of Women Engineers. If you're affiliated with stuff like that, explore their resources to get a scholarship through them. Or if not, then once you're at the university, there are a lot of teaching assistant positions or part-time jobs that you can take up, which are relatively easier to find. So that way you can even fund your living expenses while paying the tuition.
I see. Thank you, Anisha. And I think as far as I know, Nitin's program is already funded, but if you have a sentence or two to say in this matter, please do so.
Yeah, normally I can say that in Germany, unlike in US, you don't have to pay tuition fees, especially in public university. So there you save a lot of money if you don't get a scholarship per se. So then the major expenses you have is your living expenses. And this normally you can cover it from, like, I know there are 2 different kind of scholarship given by, one is from the federal government that is called Deutsche Stipendium, I think, where you get around 300 euros or so until 2 years, and that you don't have to return it back. And another one is BAföG, and which is again 300 euros, but after completing your master's, you have to pay 50% back. But this also have some kind of restriction regarding the annual income of your parent or stuff. But I'm not sure whether Indians are allowed to get this one.
No. So for BAföG, Indians are not allowed. For Deutschland Stipendium, yes, but it's really difficult because they are very socialist in terms of applications. I'm frankly speaking that because I know that. So yeah, but yeah, apart from that, yes, go ahead. These are the 2 ones which are there. In Germany, there are not many scholarships for master students. In general, there are for PhD students, yes, but not for masters. That not many. But
normally it's okay to like, if you are really want to come on scholarship, then maybe try to search some program which offers some kind of a scholarship. That would be a way to get something. But apart from that, like it's similar like US, then you can apply for some kind of research assistant positions in some of the institutes. So if you are lucky, if you have some kind of Max Planck Institute or some other institution, research institution in your city, then you can apply in that lab, and normally they give you a position if you are good enough.
So, I mean, for Germany, I could add that. So it's something like a HEVI. It's like you can easily get a job in a lab, as you said. But for masters, there is a reason why there's no scholarship, because the technical education is free, right? So you don't really pay anything. So that's why it's the case. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, both all of you, for your inputs. And Radhika, I hope this answers your question. If not, we will be having an event, especially on scholarships, pretty soon. And we do have some resources available on the website, so you can definitely check them out. I have another question for Anisha from Srivardhini. She's asking, for someone who has had exclusively industry internships, how do we go about getting strong LORs?
So if you have only done internships and you haven't worked full time yet, then the best you could do is, say you did your internship in second year and you know you want to do masters in final year, try to stay in touch with your project lead or your internship guide with whom you worked. And depends on the kind of program you're applying to also. Suppose you're applying for a research-based master's, then ask your recommender to highlight all the technical aspects of the work you did. If you're applying for a management-based master's, you could request them to highlight how you worked effectively within the team and how you were good at collaborating with people. So look at what kind of program you're applying for, and you can always change the narrative of the work you did to fit within that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Anisha. And I think Daksha has a question about internships, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to say that, we have some resources on Reticulum website. Please check them out. And we will be having an event just for internships. So please look out for that. I'm sorry, we are already running over time, but I just wanted to quickly ask this last question to our panel before we wrap up this session. As you already know, Reticulum is a networking community where we're trying to connect STEM students and professionals and learn from each other's experiences. So how did your network, existing and networking with, students from existing programs or your target programs, help you in your application process? What do you suggest people to do in this context? Let's start with Nitin. I do know you did some really interesting stuff with Twitter while getting into this program. So actually, everyone would benefit from your experience there.
Yeah, so first of all, I got to know about this program through social media and through Ashwin Bhaiya. So he told me, and he also might have got it from social media about this program. So, and secondly, what I would say, like whenever you need to get reviewed some things, like you need to get reviewed your SOP or something like this. And not only SOP, sometimes you need to get some kind of advice. At some point, I was like so confused whether I should go in research or not. What should I do? At this point, you really need your seniors to talk to you, to tell you like what kind of future is there I had. So something like this you always need to have. I really have one good friend from Portugal. He's postdoc right now, but he at that point, because I was seeing one PhD guy struggling to find a postdoc. So at that point, I was in really a dilemma that rather whether I should go for a research career or what should I do. Then at this point, I talk with him, and then these kind of people always tell you that, okay, this is part and parcel of this research game. There are time where you will be struggling with some things, but if you stick to it, then at some point, if you are really interested in something, then somehow things will come. uh, you only have to keep trying and applying in different parts, in different institution and stuff. And having a network helps you a lot, because then sometime there are some kind of openings which you can tell to your juniors, or if you have some senior, they can tell you, oh, there is some kind of position opening up, so you can apply through it. So right now also, like, this Twitter thing is really cool. So I really enjoy it. So a lot of professor and stuff. So sometime what happen if there is some kind of new professor joining in the institute. So this professors already know, which is already a part of university. And by that you can guess this professor is joining the institute, then there will be some kind of openings coming up. So then you already be in a contact with this professor. Oh, I am interested in your kind of research. Is it possible that I can join your research group or something like this? If you read some of the professors' thread, you will see these professors are really active on this social media platform. And it's really cool if you have some kind of doubt, if you don't agree with some kind of post which professor posted, you can just write it, and then you will see you will get reply there. So earlier we I used to get like this kind of uh, when we were looking for this internship and stuff, we used to apply through emails. So right now, Twitter is the thing. If you want to get some kind of internship or some kind of lab rotation, if you are in a program, then you can get it through Twitter also.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I got my position in New York when I was applying back in the day through Twitter. So it is one of the, the thing now in science where you can actually connect with people, network, and learn from their experiences, or actually learn what they are doing and how you can benefit from it. How did your network help you, Sanjay? And what's your take on this?
Yeah, so basically, as far as social media is concerned, just like how we have Twitter, we have LinkedIn as well. I mean, all you have to do is go to this particular university, like let's say for example, Johns Hopkins or ETH, go there and then look at the employees, PhDs, current PhD students, send them a connection request, clearly stating what your intentions are, and then you can just text them. But I found many people, like, they're irritating me by asking me how do I get masters abroad, this trivial questions like that. Yeah, I know sometimes it's annoying that I get questions like that, but usually I respond to each and every question. Some people just send me their SOP and then ask me to review it. That takes time again. So yeah, if you have like really in questions in specific to that particular program, you're not able to get answers in Google when you search for it, or if you have seniors, that's well and good. I mean, for NIT folks and IIT folks, we have seniors nearly everywhere in every university, so that's not really a problem. But what about for the tier 2, tier 3 universities? So they can of course approach these people on LinkedIn and ask questions that are specific to that program, which you're not able to get in common for forums outside of the social media. Apart from that, to like get a good grasp of what my chances were to get into universities, I looked at Grad Cafe and Yocket. Grad Cafe is really good, but again, these two websites, you have to take it with a pinch of salt, because I've seen people who have like 7.5 GPA with literally no research experience claiming that they've gone into MIT, but I do not know about such things. So yeah, you can look at such websites, Grad Cafe, Yocket, as well as LinkedIn. Those are pretty good. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sanjay. And what do you think about networking in application process, Anisha?
Yeah, I think Sanjay and Nitin have both hit the bullseye with all the points they mentioned. And at least when it comes to management based programs, also, networking is so important, not only while you're applying, but when you're doing the program also, because a lot of things do come by when you just know who is the right person to approach for the right thing. So, if but then in case you haven't built a network enough already in undergrad, then I think it's really cool what Simran and Ashwin, you guys are doing, like providing that platform for students to connect then. So it's really good to have such resources. You can always start somewhere and start talking to people, and just remember that if you know you want you're talking to this particular person with a particular agenda, don't jump straight into that. Try to build a connection, build a rapport with them, and then go to the question. So you build a trust, and that person would be more willing to respond to you. But yeah, for sure, keep in touch with your network, because at some point in time, definitely they'll be able to help you out.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, if you ever have any questions, just write an email to your program coordinator, to the university admissions office. They're always super nice, and they reply and help you out. With this, I would just like to thank Nitin, Anisha, and Sanjay for their time. We had such an incredible discussion. I know we went a little bit over time, but I think it was totally worth it. We will be posting this on our YouTube channel, and recently Ashwin also posted our Discord, so please join there to meet such more interesting people and learn from their experiences. Until then, thank you so much, and as Reticulum always says, connect, share, and grow. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.